Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your homeboy E Short, as usual, hanging out in my man room with my brother Les Miller. What's going on, Les?
What's going on, E man?
Yeah.
Hey, this
Hey,
is
I want to. Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that we don't have every day we do a show. It's like we have a special guest and we talk them up. But this one here is extremely special to us because, at least for me, because of the shirts that we sell for the basketball history page. The first two shirts that were purchased, one of them was this gentleman, and it to me it just reflects how important he feels what we're doing is that he participated right away without any gumption or problem. But without further ado, I want to introduce Marvin Roberts, Wingate High School's legend. Marvin, how are you, bro?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
yeah,
Marvin, do me
doing
a favor.
well.
Yeah, Marvin, do me a favor and explain or tell everybody about yourself.
I'm a Brooklyn kid, obviously, and I uh, I grew up on Green Avenue between Reed and Stuyvesant.
Okay,
My early school years, I went to PS 26, and then I went right around the corner to junior high school 57. And my basketball career began at 57. I
Okay.
Coach Charles Dabney was our coach. And he asked me when I was in the eighth grade to join the team because he had seen me playing out in the park. But I really wasn't confident enough. So I asked him, could I be the scorekeeper? And he said, yeah. So I was the scorekeeper, and I traveled around with the team and kept scoring, what have you. And then in the ninth grade, I wound up joining the team, and we had a couple of great players on that team.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, the most talented player on the team was a kid named James Pearsall. We may know him as Luke.
Right.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Luke was a guard, and another kid named Calvin Kaiser. And so anyway, I played in the ninth grade, and at the end of that, our last game was at the Brownsville Boys Club. And I
mm,
remembered after that game, Coach Dabney pulled me aside and said, you need to keep playing this basketball. You can possibly get a scholarship to college, and you may be about 6'7", 6'8", because I played baseball at the time.
Okay.
okay,
And so, keeping that in mind, my mother and father, I'm an only child. My mother and father, we moved from Green Avenue to Sterling Place between Utica and Schenectady.
okay.
And that allowed me to go to Wingate. And so I started Wingate in the 10th grade. And you know that proverbial story of a big kid walking in the hallway and the coach sees him and says, hey, kid. Yeah, I was that kid because I went
Wow,
there to play baseball and I made the baseball team
Okay.
as a pitcher and as a first baseman. But anyway, the coach was Howie Rosenstein. And so my sophomore year, uh, saw me in the hallway, went in the gym. He asked me to do some shots, and I did. And he gave me a uniform, and I wound up
mm,
on Wingate's team. So my sophomore year, I didn't play at all, really. I may have gotten in a couple of games. Then my junior year, I wound up having what was called water on the knee, and so I didn't play most of the year. But I was able to play up at St. John's Recreation Center, up at
Mm-hmm.
the park, and then in the tournaments there. And that's when I met the great Lester Roberts. No
wow,
relation,
nice.
but I met Lester.
Mhm.
Lester and Sparky and Zeke and all of the mentors up at the Recreation Center. So they were teaching me the game. Now at the end of my junior year, I wound up playing the last four games, and we had a little win streak. We beat Boys High, and we beat the great Boys High and Erasmus Hall.
Mhm.
But we didn't finish out and make the playoffs that year. And then my senior year was really the year that I wound up actually playing a whole season.
Mhm.
And we were good. We were a little over 500, but I also had met actually in my junior year Jack Kaminer, and Coach
Okay.
Kaminer was our coach at Wingate during my junior year, and he played an important part of my basketball life as well as Lester. And my senior year, I had a good individual year to the point where I was named to a number of all New York City basketball teams. Um,
Mm.
there was a great basketball guru named Howard Garfinkel.
Yeah.
He,
I
if,
definitely know the name. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
Mr. Garfinkel had a 5-star,
Right.
Right.
a great 5-star basketball camp. Um, and so that senior year, Mr. Garfinkel named me New York City Sleeper of the Year. And that brought a lot of attention to me. And back then, the NCAA tournament was good, but the NIT was the big bopper.
Right. And
Right?
I see. Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and most of the teams in the country would come into New York and play at the Garden, and the schools that were interested in me came and met my family, and the NCAA allowed you to take 5 trips. I took 5 recruiting trips, uh, and I decided I wanted to go to University of New Mexico, but
Mm.
coaching staff from Utah State came to my home, and the freshman coach, my parents loved him. And
Okay.
after they left, they said, "You're going to Utah State."
Wow.
Wow.
And that's where I went. Fast forward, the freshman coach, who became my freshman coach, and back then, you remember, freshmen didn't play varsity
Right.
Right.
basketball.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, they
Yeah.
only played 3 years of varsity. And I had a pretty good freshman year. I broke all of the school's scoring and rebound records. And then
Hmm.
my my sophomore year, we weren't really that good. We were 10-27, but we were an independent. So we played the best schools in the country. We weren't in the
Oh, okay. Okay.
and I individually I wound up having a pretty good year. My first
I would say better than good year.
Well, that's very kind of
What
you.
were you were averaging 27 points a game. Come on, man.
Yeah, well, I jumped out with a couple of real big games. My
Hmm.
first varsity game was against Wyoming at Wyoming, and I had 27 and 16. And then our next game was on the road against University of Missouri, and I had 35 and 15. And then my third game at home, we played Seattle University, and I had 40. Uh, and so by the end of like the first couple of months, I was the 5th leading scorer in the United States.
Buckets.
It was it
Goodness.
was Pete Maravich, Calvin Murphy, Rick Mount, Spencer Haywood, and myself.
Wow. That's
That's a heck of a crew right there.
that's a good company, my brother.
Yeah.
Well, I was just very fortunate, and at the end of the year, I finished 6th in the country. And then my junior year, our freshman team had real good talent, led by Nate Williams. But from our neighborhood was my high school teammate Walter Bees, who joined me at Utah State. And when they came up to the varsity that year, we were 23-6, and
Mm.
we wound up playing in the NCAA, get invited to the tournament because you had to win 20 games. And
Right.
our first game was against Texas El Paso, led by the great Tiny Archibald and Mike Schweitzer from the Bronx, and Ples Van Vaz. and we beat them. And then the next round, we go to the Western Regionals, and we played Santa Clara with Dennis Autry and the Ogden brothers, and we beat them. And so now for the Western Regional Finals, the basketball community felt that the best forwards in the country were Sidney Wicks and Curtis Rowe from UCLA.
Right.
But a lot of people out west felt that Nate Williams and I were a pretty powerful tandem as well.
Okay.
Well, unfortunately, the night before we were to play UCLA, Nate hurt his ankle and he wasn't at full strength. So for the Western Regional Finals, we wound up losing to the Bruins, but I had a real big game because I had to carry the offensive load. I wound up with 33 points and 16 rebounds.
Damn.
And Coach Wooden he started Wicks on me, then he took Wicks off me and put Rowe on me, and then they kept going back and forth. But anyway, we wound up losing the game. So then my senior year, I had a pretty good senior year. And as a result, I was named to the All-America team all 3 years of my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And that allowed me to get drafted by the NBA and the ABA.
Yeah.
I was drafted by the Detroit Pistons in the 3rd round and by the Denver, you know them as the Nuggets, but they were the Rockets back then.
They were the Rockets, yeah.
That's right.
But I want to jump back though and just, the rumor has it that the whole left side of John Wooden's gray hair was caused by you taking Lowe and Wicks and just destroying them. After all that gray hair on the left side of his head.
But Eric, they won the game. But Coach Wooden was very kind to me. He had mentioned that I was the best player that they had faced that year. And so that was very nice. And then I would see Coach Wooden later on, some years later. But yeah, I was very blessed and fortunate to have a good college career, which allowed me to be drafted. And the 2nd round with Denver and the 3rd round with Detroit. And I chose Denver because, number one, I was familiar with the Rocky Mountain area. 2, Denver offered me a 3-year guaranteed contract, and I'm not Phi Beta Kappa math major, but Detroit offered me a 1-year. So it was like, I'll go with Denver. And the other thing was, I'm a kid who didn't grow up wanting to play in the NBA or wanting to play basketball. All of these things started happening because I had some talent and I had some great people in my life, starting with Lester Roberts and then Jack Kaminer, and someone else was instrumental in my basketball career. You see, I brought this for you to see. You see this? In the summertime, I was very fortunate. Coach Kaminer took me up to watch the Rucker Pro Tournament. When I was And I saw the greatest players in the world out there at 155th and 8th Avenue. I saw everyone from Wilt to then Lou Alcindor to most of the Knickerbockers, Cassie and Fred. And fast forward, some years later, I meet Floyd Lane. And Floyd Lane and Sports Foundation, Floyd put me on his team, the Celtics. We would call it the Bronx Celtics. But on our team, and I played 2 summers with them, in the backcourt was Tiny Archibald and Willie Worsley. And then one summer, Austin played with us, the great Austin Carr.
Austin Carr,
That's right. Dave Cowens played with us. And on any given Saturday or Sunday, as you all well know, for free, the NBA and the ABA came to Harlem, to the in Harlem. And we would play against the great Julius Erving, Joe Hammond, Pee Wee Kirkland, Herman Knowles, Frank Streety, who I played against when he was at Eastern District.
We were just talking about Frank Streety this morning, right, Les?
Yeah.
up there, Rodan, he would be on the mic. They nicknamed him Shake and Bake. You know,
Yeah, I know shake and bake. I know shake and bake. Yeah,
as a
yeah,
matter of fact, the talent was so good that uh, Hawthorne Wingo was a legend up there. He winds up playing for the Knickerbockers.
right.
So my point is, there were great talent there at that tournament, and I was very fortunate to play a couple of years out there. Well, another thing about growing up in Bed-Stuy and Brooklyn, up at St. John's Park, yeah, I'm college All-America and averaging all these points, but I go back to St. John's. I'm just another guy, and guys would be
Right.
doing me, and I'm
That's
doing,
right.
because of the talent.
Right.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
remember a coach by the name of Raul Perez,
Yeah. Rap.
Rap would have a team called the Crushers. Well,
yeah. Okay.
that was right. That was in name only. That was
Yeah.
really Boys High. and they had the great Mel Davis
Mhm.
and Luke and Russell Johnson and Booby Green, and that's where I got my real education in basketball, up at
Yeah,
John's and with
Yeah.
Lester. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand, Marvin, that I keep bringing this up, and I think I mentioned it to you in our pre-conversations about the fact that college that article was stating that college coaches, anytime that they're looking for basketball players to go to their universities, the first place that they go is Brooklyn, New York, and Queens, New York. And the article actually came out, I think it was like 1964 or 63 or something like that. But that was the I guess you would call it the Home Depot or the Lowe's for college coaches to find, a one-stop shop. And the talent level, which was maintained over years, the talent level in New York was so ridiculous that you can't even imagine it. You can't imagine it. And just the mere fact that you mentioned guys that weren't from there coming to Harlem and playing in, the Rucker tournament, Dave Cowens, Bill Bradley, they're playing in the Rucker. And
Earl Monroe,
yeah,
all were there.
yeah,
And your point is well taken, Eric, because when Utah State then signed me, and oh, by the way, that freshman coach who dazzled my mother and father, years later, he interviewed for the job at LSU.
mhm.
And after Pete Maravich left and they fired, not fired, but after Press Maravich left, that freshman coach of mine wound up getting the LSU job, and he brought the world a kid named Shaquille O'Neal, along with
Dale Brown.
there
Dale
you
Brown.
go. It
Yeah,
was Coach Brown. Yeah, that's who I played for in college.
and it's weird that Dale Brown had ended up building a relationship with Lester
There
Roberts
you go. And Lester wound up going down to
to
Baton
Louisiana. That's right.
Well, here's the other connection. In the
mhm.
park, when Coach Brown would come in the summer to see me, he would see all of the talent. And he saw a guy who was beautiful to watch play basketball named Kenny Hall. And he wound up getting Kenny Hall out at Westminster College, a Division II school, and Kenny wound up leading the United States in scoring in Division II. Also
Wow.
in the park was a kid named Henry Togans. He was nicknamed Dinky. He wound up bringing Dinky out to Minot State, where he had a great career. So,
And you said Westminster in Utah?
yes, in Salt Lake
Yeah,
City.
that's right. That's because that's where Willie Hawes played at.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly,
right.
exactly. So,
Man.
the talent that was in the park. One last thing about St. John's Park. In the summer, when I would see, Peter Davis is a little younger than I am, but we'd see the juniors, and there was this guy in the park who would play basketball with a toothpick in his mouth, and he was brilliant. He was brilliant. And so I now go back to school. It may have been my sophomore, junior year, and I would read these basketball magazines, and that's how you found out a lot about people because everybody wasn't on
Yeah,
television.
absolutely, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I'd see this name, this
I think
name
I know where you're going.
I gave you a hint by mentioning Peter. So I see this name from Virginia Union, if I'm not mistaken, and he's leading the country in scoring. Earl Monroe is at Winston-Salem, and I go back and I see Crusher, and I'm talking to someone, and they said that's Mike Davis. I said, Crusher's Mike Davis, the Mike Davis from Virginia. The point is, at that park, you found great players all over the country who came from St. John's Rec and St. John's Park.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And it was kind of like believe it or not, it's kind of like a museum of talent that was just hovering there, so the people would come in. It's kind of like getting a meal. Everybody comes and gets their meal, and they're gone to do their thing wherever they're at. But the stoppage is to get it, get the meal at St. John's, get the reps in, get the coaching and the mentoring, and then you go out and do wherever you're doing it at. And that ability to do that is grown to this big monster in New York City that everybody is aware of.
That's right.
Yeah.
But then you look at, like you said, guys that didn't make it, or if they did make it, but the tutelage was all provided at the parks of St. John's Rec, and people that we all know over the years has done a great job for us. And
Right.
but then people branched out and started doing their own things in other locations like siloed, but the talent pool was just ridiculous. But I'm still blown out of the water and I knew this anyway, about the Rucker having talent from other places that were NBA players coming in and playing because they respected, competing, you know. And speaking to that, what was it like playing with some of those guys?
Well, it gave me an education. Number one, you know how talking heads on television talk about the Mount Rushmore of the greatest players that ever played, and most of these talking heads, are much younger than I am. But playing with the great Tiny Archibald, I got a lesson in how to run the court. To be aware in terms of his passing ability, in terms of Tiny taking big guys to the hole and scoring. Yes, there's the great Steph Curry, but no. Before the Steph Currys and Kyrie Irvings and all, no. Watch footage of Tiny Archibald, and you gentlemen, I know are aware of the fact that Tiny did something that to this day, no one in the history of the NBA has ever done.
That's right.
That's right. And that's
scoring and assists
in the same year.
Right.
Averaging 34 points a game and 11 point something assists in the same year. And Tiny's about 6'1", maybe.
With a smile on his face.
That's right. And he's in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. And then speaking of Hall of Famers, seeing the great Julius Erving before he became the doctor, and then on a professional level, when I wound up playing professionally, I played 3 years with Denver, and then 2 years with the Kentucky Colonels, and we won the ABA championship in 74-75 against the Indiana Pacers, with another Brooklyn kid who became legendary while he was in high school, and that's the great Roger Brown.
Right.
And Rod, as a matter of fact, I was just in Brooklyn a week ago to the dedication of one block of Prospect Place in Utica Avenue.
Right.
They renamed it Roger Brown Way, but I remember playing for the ABA championship against the Pacers with McGinnis and Billy Knight and what have you. And this was Roger's last year. And I remember him coming in the game, and I'm on the court, and the announcer mentions Roger Brown. And I played against him during the season, but now this is for the ABA championship. And there I am, and I had a surreal moment because, wait a minute, this is the great Roger Brown, two kids from Wingate playing for a professional basketball championship. Who'd have thunk it? And what snapped me out of it was immediately he got the ball and a jump in my face, and I snapped it. And really,
Yeah,
I need
yeah.
to wake up,
That
but
will wake you up. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but anyway, I learned a lot playing in the Rucker, but most importantly is I can't stress this enough. Mentors up at St. John's Recreation Center, uh, playing for Lester and having Lester Roberts give me an education about the game. And then, as I said, once I got to Wingate, uh, uh, Jack Haminer and learning more about the game from him. And then up at Rucker, again, this each one teach one here.
Yeah.
The great Floyd Lane. And if you don't know who Floyd Lane is, he's one of the great college basketball players of all time. And he was a member of a team that won the NIT and NCAA tournament in the same year, City
Right.
College.
At City
Wow.
College, that's right.
That's
That's
right.
right.
That's
You
right.
know,
So I've been around basketball royalty, and Eric, you know before when I sent you a little bit about my career, I wasn't real famous in the playground and or anything like that, but when I sat back and look at who I've been around, I played for 4 Hall of Fame coaches. I began my basketball career professionally with Alex Hannum. He was the coach
Wow.
of the '67 Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah. I know
Wilton.
Alex. Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then after that, I played with my rookie year, and it was his last year. And then he traded for me, Larry Brown. I played for Larry Brown with the Carolina Cougars briefly, and then after that, when we won the ABA championship, I played for UB Brown. And we won the
that's
championship.
one of my favorites.
There you go, with Artis Gilmore and Dan Issel and Louis Dampier and Bird Avery. And then when I was with the Lakers in '76, '77, I played, well, life would have it. I saw Lou Alcindor when I was a kid, and now I'm the teammate of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with the
Yeah,
Lakers.
that's awesome. That is awesome.
And then who's our coach? As a matter of fact, our coach died about 3 weeks ago.
And
The
good old
great
Jerry West.
West, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been very fortunate to learn basketball
Yeah.
from teachers and played with some great players.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yo,
Les got some stuff
I,
for you though.
I have a quick question though. Is that book that you show? Is that your book?
Yes, it's my book.
And what's the name of that so everybody can know?
It's provided by the Harlem Professionals Incorporated, and
Okay.
it's each one teach one. That was the tagline, and in it you'll see team rosters from 1970, the summer of 71, 72, and you'll see all these great players and teams up at the Rucker Pro Tournament from Pee Wee Kirkland and Joe Hammond, and they're all in here. Yeah.
So how can some of our viewers be able to purchase it or download it?
That I don't know. I always say the first stop should be Amazon. That's the first
Okay.
stop. You know, but this is in terms of the Rucker Pro Tournament. Everyone from Connie, and if you see this photo, that iconic photo of Julius at half court, and everybody, I think Craig Smoke mentioned how all of the kids in the trees, on the buildings.
Right.
I'll help research this as well. But Sports Foundation also up in Harlem,
Okay.
that they may have this as well.
Yeah.
That'll be
I mean,
good.
it's
And on a side note too, so I'm gonna republish your book because me and Eric we played up in the Rucker too as youngsters,
Uh-huh.
you know. with the Restoration Flyers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Bob
played there.
McCullough, he was the godfather up there. Bob
Yeah.
McCullough.
Yeah.
Oh yes, oh
Yeah,
yes,
because
absolutely.
Bob and a bunch of other guys started the high school Holcomb Ruckham Memorial.
Yes,
And
sir.
so we were probably we were the first Brooklyn team to go up there and win the whole thing. And
Right.
so we're part of, part etched in as part of the history. And then later on we played in the Rucker, as after college and in those years. So
Right,
um
right.
that extension of that mecca environment, if you don't know anything about basketball, you know about the Rucker.
Yeah, that's
You
a
know.
truth.
That's right. And also, in terms of Mecca, years later, Kobe Bryant hears about the Rucker. He grows up knowing about the Rucker. His father, Joe Bryant in Philadelphia.
Right.
Remember, it's almost like he made a pilgrimage to Rucker and played a game
Yeah.
there. And then the great Kevin Durant made a pilgrimage to Rucker.
That's
And
right. That's right.
it was
That's
a
right.
destination for those serious basketball players. And as I said, I'm very blessed and fortunate that I had an opportunity to play for a couple of summers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also want to know, like, as far as like people that you played with, what was it like? And I'm just gonna run a couple of names because these were names that were like very fresh in my memory of your teammates, in the ABA, like Willie Wise, who I thought was nice,
Well,
and
Willie,
Dan
now I
Issel
played
and
against Willie. Yes,
okay,
I played with Dan.
yeah,
But Willie
and
Wise played for the
and
Utah Stars.
also, did you play with Jumping Joe Caldwell?
Yes, for a minute with the Carolina Cougars. I was traded to Carolina from Denver at the end of my third season because Billy Cunningham, who had jumped from the NBA to the ABA, he
Right.
had kidney surgery or something. And so Larry Brown needed a forward. And he traded me heads up for, him as Snapper Jones,
Right.
the great Steve
Yeah,
Jones.
Steve Jones.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Yeah.
so I played
What
with
did Jumping Joe Caldwell jump like they really said he could?
well, yeah,
Come
they
on,
always,
man.
they always are saying stuff, aren't they?
Right.
From guys touching the top of the backboard and
Yeah.
leaving, a quarter and 12 cents change. But yeah, Pogo could really jump, but he was near the end of his career. But
Right.
I learned because Joe was a all-star in the NBA with the St. Louis Hawks. I learned professionalism from Joe. Quick story. Back then we flew commercial,
Right.
and
Right.
so you'd see the NBA and ABA at airports and at the gates. And so I remember on one trip I'm sitting with Joe. I was a starter, so I got a chance to sit in first class. If you weren't a starter, you said
You
go.
sat in the back. You sat in the back. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
messed up, man.
So I was sitting with Joe, and Joe had on a suit, and he had an attaché case, and he was reading the Wall Street Journal. Oh, and I'm like, wow, this is interesting. And so he was telling me about. He said, look around the cabin here in first class. See all of these other people? They're captains of industry. They're CEOs and all of that. We and you are at the top of what you do. So it's important for us to dress the part, because we are professionals. He then
Wow.
said, that car you got? And I had a big Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham. It was gold. He said, no. And he had this, to me, it was kind of ugly, and because I didn't know, but he had this Mercedes Benz 450 SEL.
Mhm.
When we won the championship the next year when I was with Kentucky, I went and bought me he told me about quality. My point is, he was a great mentor to me in terms of how to be a professional athlete.
Right.
And then, it's funny thing you're saying is Because I heard some criticisms of guys and what the waiting room for the NBA draft was like, and it said it's like more, it's so much entertainment, and it's overkill, and it's like these guys don't even they like it's like a prom for them. They're still kids, and they don't understand, and it's like to be an adult and try to express any information to a younger person. A lot of times they're gonna result in not wanting to listen because I don't want to hear what you got to say. But when it's somebody who's a mentor or a teammate and they've been there, they're a veteran, you have to respect what they're saying because they're telling you about the landscape that you're getting ready to participate in.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
but one thing that has never changed is your conduct is important. And there's a one thing that I know for me, and Les and I grew up together like from birth, basically. Our our reputations and how we conduct ourselves are very important, even to this day. So, him doing that for you,
Yeah.
where is that at now? I mean, I don't know if it's happening, don't get me wrong, everyone, but that is what vets should be doing and sharing
Well, well,
experiences.
well, Eric, I was fortunate. In 1994, I was invited to speak at the rookie transition program. It used to be in Orlando. I'm not sure where it is now, but I
Mhm.
was invited to speak to that rookie class about my life after basketball, not being a big star, and how I had to prepare for life after basketball. And at
Mm,
that transition program, what they do, they take the rookie class, the first those 2 rounds, and then that rookie class where I spoke was Grant Hill, Jason Kidd, the big dog uh,
wow.
from uh,
Yeah,
from Purdue,
that was a
um,
good class. Yeah, yeah.
Jawan Howard, the great Charlie Ward from the Knickerbockers, who, as you know, was the Heisman Trophy winner
That's right.
with
Mhm.
Florida State. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
so the NBA tries to prepare those young men for their new life because life is going to be real different. And it's not just preparing them, but also preparing them for the people who are in their group may
Yeah,
change too.
absolutely.
Because now you go from last week maybe having $25 in your pocket to starting Monday, you're a multimillionaire.
Right.
And, and the NBA, through their transition program, helps those kids transition. The other thing I wanted to mention, I had an opportunity to, after my career ended, I was fortunate to be elected to the NBA Retired Players Association Board
Mm,
of Directors, and I was with them for 6 years, and I served as treasurer. And that gave me insight into things like the CBA and just a lot of things that are going on that the public doesn't see. So I was very fortunate. Basketball
nice.
has 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 given me a life. I've traveled to China uh, with the uh, with the 2000, getting the Chinese national team ready for the 2000 Olympics. A bunch of former players and a great friend of mine, Mel Davis, was who was responsible for putting that together. He selected myself and Howie Jones, the great Howie Jones from Boys High, to be 2 managers on that team.
Yeah.
Also had the chance to go to Israel, 12 former NBA players, to see what the relationship like is between America and Israel, and also understand the Palestinian conflict. Basketball has given me so much, and I'm truly grateful that I've been a part of this great basketball community that we're all a part of.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, brother. Absolutely, man.
And that's something that, oddly enough, before we came on there, Les and I were talking about that we're so connected with each other. That
That's
is unbelievable. And reason being, we're reflecting on people who have passed. And
Right.
I was telling him, I said, how difficult it is for me. And it really is. I mean, I'm saying it on there. I have a real hard time with it. I really do, because it's like losing a cousin to me because I got to know these guys 10 years younger, 10 years older, and we form a bond. And I don't let go of that. That's the funny thing. I'm holding on. So the respect that I have for that level of accomplishment, and it's not only about putting basketballs in the basket, because like you said, other things that, about the game after your life in basketball, that camaraderie is still there. Those players, I remember who they are, and I take pride in that, and I'm pretty sure at that level, guys do, because you go through the ringer with people, and even your opponent, that you compete against somebody like for 10 years, there better be some kind of relationship built, you know.
Eric, again, your point is well taken. I told you I was in Brooklyn a week or so ago for the dedication of Roger Brown's Roger Brown Way, but there was someone who I've reconnected with. We began our relationship on the same Little League team. And that's the wonderful and great Ray Haskins. Ray Haskins and I play Little League baseball together. He he
Wow.
and I had dinner with Ray and Robert Murphy, who was my Wingate teammate, and Wayne Morgan and Jack Kaminer and guys like Alan, all of these guys from the community who are doing things in the community to this day, helping young men become successful. And yeah, I got a chance to play in the league. I got a chance to play in both leagues. I also played in the league. But the impact that Ray Haskins and Lloyd McCrory up at St. John's, I remember Lloyd was on the biddies and the juniors, and then to see him this past week or so as a man with a family who's done wonderful things in his career. That gives me a great deal of pride in the fact that we all have come from the same cloth.
Yeah,
that's right.
And you want to know something, though?
Mhm.
Not to cut either one of you off, but I mean, getting kind of choked up about this, but the things that you're saying, Marvin, Les and I is saying at, like 15 years after. But in our cycle, we're saying the exact same things. The exact same things about the people that were around us, the people that mentored us. We were just before we came on air, we were talking about Ray. We were talking about Ray, right, Les?
Yeah, that's right.
And it's like because of the level of respect, man, and it's unbelievable to connect with that, with a group of guys 10 years older or 10 years younger, but then finding out the guys that were younger than you, how they looked up to you.
They were watching. You never
You're
know.
talking to two of them. You're talking to two of them.
I'm at that dedication ceremony, and this young man comes up to me and he says, "Marvin, do you remember me?" And I really didn't right off the bat. And he says, "I'm Ralph Midget." His last name is Ralph was on the biddies. He lives in Connecticut as a family. And he said, and another young man says, "Marvin, you play up at St. John's with my cousin Primo at the recreation center." And it's like, again, if you speak to someone long enough and they mention names, they'll, "Oh yeah, I played with him. Yeah, absolutely. I know him. Yeah. Oh, I went to school with him." Again, this is a community, the basketball community, particularly as we're talking about Brooklyn and New York. It's a community that I've been fortunate to have done a lot of things in basketball, but that's where I got my tutelage. That's where I got my schooling. That prepared me. Yes, I make All-America teams and all of that, but it wouldn't have happened if it was not for St. John's Recreation Center and the guidance that I got there.
Yes.
Yeah. And that effort, that comes, from those locations, and specifically St. John's, it's like it's there. And you could leave and come back 10 years later and it's still there. That aura is still there. If you walk into St. John's Rec, if I go upstairs, man, I start having flashbacks. I don't, And it's incredible because everybody that goes through it, Les and I were talking about it. You figure 26 public schools in Brooklyn, this is average, let's say 30. There's 10 kids on every team. So that's 3,000 kids. And then we're talking like every year, it's kind of like, maybe the same guys for 3 years, and then it's another bunch of guys. But for the most part, the accumulation of who the people are, and we remember. No different than you. If I ask you right now to sing Ball of Confusion from the Temptations, I'm pretty sure you know the words because your memory is
Exactly.
good.
Exactly.
That's what the world is today.
Right. Hey, right?
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
thing is the same thing goes with the memory of the people we played with, played against. Even if a guy sat on the bench all year long and you played against that team, you know who he is. He knows who you are. And
Right.
it's a beautiful thing to know that we share in the experiences. We all have the same training. We end up using the same terms. Everything that we say, it's like St. John's Rec comes into play. Lester Roberts' name, Gil Reynolds, George Merton, Ray Haskins, Lloyd McCory, these Rapper Perez, these guys are,
Mel Davis,
yeah,
Bobby Green, Russell Johnson, the
yeah,
Question, the great Charlie Davis from Brooklyn Tech, Ronnie Nunn, who played at Brooklyn Tech, winds up becoming a great NBA ref and the supervisor of referees in the NBA.
yeah.
All
Yeah.
our neighborhood.
And the crazy thing though, Marvin, is that even like when years go by, and then we start talking about the Chris Mullins, the Sam Perkins, the Vinnie Johnsons, and the same thing's going on. And we're thinking about guys that didn't make it, like a guy like Wayne Mackey, who ended up being the head of the NFL referees that went to high school with Les.
Yeah.
But he was a basketball player, but he, was his first love was football. There are so many ties that we have to each other, and it's never ending. Like I said before, we're all cousins.
That's right. That's
you know, and it's like, but if you take a step back, the level of respect has to be given and drawn for the people at whose shoulders we stood on. And for me, that's the paramount reason why, one of the reasons why I do this, because I know I'm standing on your shoulders. We're Wingate Park guys. I'm serious. We lived on Rutland Road. We grew up on Rutland Road, man. So
Eric, I keep looking at that LIU jersey behind you. Here's a 6 degrees to that. One of the greatest scorers in college basketball, and the greatest scorer probably at LIU, is a kid by the name of Charles Jones, if I'm not mistaken.
Charles.
Yeah, Charles Jones.
I found out some years later, his father, Big Charlie, we used to call him at St. John's. He used to, I got schooled by him every day. I go to the park and would be guarding his father, Big Charlie. And I found out that Charles Jones, Big Charlie, that's father and son again.
Yeah.
You never know. And I have a relationship now with Charles Jones because I knew and played against his father.
Yeah.
Wow.
He didn't play in the league like I did, but when I would go home in the summer, Charlie Jones was just as tough as anybody that I played with or against in the league.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's people like that everywhere we turn.
That's
because like I said, like we use the same terms with the same concepts of how we were trained in playing D, or how our games were and how hard coaches were. And one thing I could also say is that we end up all being coachable players. All of us are coachable players. And the other thing, I'm going to jump back to one of the first things you were talking about, Tiny. And Les and I talk about this all the time. Tiny makes the rest of those guys of current basketball era look like garbage to me. I'm sorry, because he was efficient. He didn't waste his dribble. Like you said, watch videos. I have watched videos, and he takes his man straight up, no extra dribbling. Oh no, it's efficient. Get it done. I'm out of there. What do you learn in New York? You do what you got to do, and you get your ass back on D. It's transition into the next part of the game, and that's what. And I always tell we talk about all the time. the level of efficiency that New York City basketball players had in those days, that's what made us what we are because we were efficient. We didn't
And you
waste
knew,
anything.
and also based on your game, you could even tell what borough you come from.
How you
Because in
Wow.
played,
the city,
how
Good.
you played. That's
in the
right.
city, in the Bronx, they went to the basket a lot and took people up. But in Brooklyn, many of us were great shooters, and
Right.
we shot. And so there was a certain style, and you guys, maybe you were old enough to remember this one summer they had the New York City citywide tournament with all of the boroughs were playing in this big tournament. But they would have, each borough would have their own, and it was beautiful to watch. You go to any park, be it um, uh, St. John's Park or Kingston Park or Soul in the Hole or Foster Park, and you see all the great Fly Williams comes to mind and Rodney Parker. And I mean, it was just a great couple of
Yes.
summers
Yes.
there for New
Yes.
York City basketball.
Yeah. And it's like, and it wasn't that we were jump shooters because we could shoot. We were taught that the jump shot is to set up our driving game. See, there was a mindset behind it. That's
Yeah.
Lester
Yeah.
Roberts for you right there.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
show them the ball and then you take them to the hoop. Whereas in the Bronx and Manhattan, it's like you're putting the ball on the floor and trying to get your man to make a mistake. No, all I gotta do is show it to you. Once I show it, you got to make a decision as a defender. And like it was calculated offensive schemes being taught to players in New York, or rather in Brooklyn. Whereas like I said, Bronx is like, and then in Queens, it's kind of similar to Brooklyn. Show them that jump shot first, and then once they buy in, that's when you take them. And that once again, efficiency. And you mentioned like areas of Brooklyn, but Brooklyn, the vast area of Brooklyn, everywhere, it's the same information was being shared. And I'm trying to find out who was the heir apparent or the original Godfather, which would have to be maybe somebody in the 50s started doing something and it started branching off all over Brooklyn. And then all of these great coaches started popping up, like you said, Rodney Parker, Lester Roberts, the Gil Reynolds, rapper. All of these guys spawned out, but who was their grandfather?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
there was a guy up at St. John's who's a little older than Les named Zeke Clemens.
I know who Zeke is too.
Yeah, and also Sparky. And Sparky went to Erasmus Hall. One of the Niles family, Butch Niles,
Oh,
Billy
absolutely.
Niles,
The Niles
Steve
family.
Niles,
Mhm.
John Niles. One of the things also I learned up at St. John's, I've lived most of my life in Los Angeles. I lived there for 30 years. I live now here in Atlanta for the last 19 years. But back then, I learned about HBCUs because many of those guys, our mentors, they couldn't get into PWIs, predominantly white institutions. So
Yeah.
they would go to Virginia Union, Shaw, Winston-Salem, Johnson Smith. And so I learned about HBCU basketball and the tournaments, the CIAA, and all of these great players who came from our neighborhood who populated HBCU basketball. So that was another education that I got
Right.
in terms of the talent there. Yeah, the PWI schools on television, but you look at those HBCUs back then, they had great talent.
Yeah.
Talent.
Yeah, and the growth of the environment, which it really helped us all, because like you said, we probably a lot of people probably wouldn't be able to go to schools without those HBCUs. So they would have. I hate to use the word alternative because they existed, coexisted, but they were a helping for us just as what was going on in Brooklyn. Because
And they
Right,
all
right.
got their degrees too. All
Yeah.
of those men came back with their degrees and became educators, be it teaching at junior high school, 35 or whatever, wherever it was. So not only was it a basketball education, but I also looked at them and they all had their degrees. And that was real important for me as well.
Right.
Right.
Right. And their extension of going and being who they were you look at, how Brooklyn was, everyone started, creating their own environments. And that's why growth was there. There was no animosity associated. And it's like, then that growth started becoming, I guess, infectious around the country because people started seeing that, like I said before, about the coaches coming in New York to see what's going on. They had the pick of the litter.
That's right.
And in New York, rather in Brooklyn or and New York, when there was busing, imagine the same scenario if that hadn't happened and wasn't no like alternatives to everyone. Everybody would end up probably at Wingate and Boys High because that's Boys High was like they couldn't handle all of the athletes that were there. But just because of the busing situation that occurred in New York, allowed guys to go to other schools so that their skill sets would shine in other places, whereas they might not have been able to play because there's 80 guys that are good basketball players. Somebody's not going to make the team. But busing, believe it or not, was a blessing for the minority athlete during that
I
time.
heard you mention busing when you had the interview with Craig
Right.
about being bused. That wasn't happening when we played. But something else you mentioned, Boys High, in terms of having to go there. The great Connie Hawkins, and I got a chance, the late great Connie Hawkins, to meet Connie and go on trips, NBA trips with Connie. But Boys High School, when I played, we played in what was called the Suicide Division. That's what it was called.
Yeah.
And it was led by Boys High, Erasmus Hall, Thomas Jefferson, with the great Jim McMillan, who was a little trivia, when the Lakers won their 33 games in a row, that streak began because Elgin was no longer going to be playing, and they inserted Jim McMillan
McMillan.
the lineup and won 33 in a row. But he was at Jefferson. Then you had Midwood and Tilden and Brooklyn Tech.
Yeah. Because Midwood had Steve Bracey.
Yeah, Steve was a couple of years behind, but he wound up playing in the league. The Suicide Division was as tough as any division of high schools probably in the country, and all of the great players who came out of there, legendary players.
Right. And it's as the years went on, the Suicide Division changed a little.
Oh,
Because it's kind of like Erasmus and Midwood went one direction with, ended up being like with Sheepshead Bay, Fort Hamilton, blah, blah, blah. But then Canarsie, Jeff, Boys House, South Shore, it's kind of like a realignment,
I see.
And because everyone like, from the Canarsie era of World Be Free and them, they all talk about, oh, they were part of the Suicide Division, but the real Suicide Division was created with the teams that you mentioned, initially. But I guess because of redistricting and the building of schools, when they built Canarsie and South Shore, things kind of changed a little bit, But
Those schools were, when I was leaving Wingate, that was Canarsie's first year in the Suicide, and South Shore was a brand new school when I
right,
left.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. But but your school alone in itself had like a constantly era of great players coming out of there with
Our school
Bernard.
won the city championship one year with the great Bernard Harden. I saw
Yeah,
Bernard last weekend
good
too.
old Bernard, man.
Oh yeah.
And plus, I think you met, our buddy Dr. Ricky Jarvis as well. Which is a Wingate great, man. And it's like that the cultural growth of all those schools, you see the talent rich environment that every year, every era that is represented, Wingate has represented somebody in that environment. And it's a big testimony of, I guess the coaching as well, but that era had so many great players, it was inevitable for that to happen.
But Eric, it's a shame. I found Wingate doesn't exist as we knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the building is there, but I think they chopped it up into 4 kind of little schools, and it's not Wingate anymore. And then Boys High is now Boys and Girls, and that's been that way for a while.
Right. And they
but
did the same thing with South Shore. I don't know what. Listen, they do that with Brooklyn Tech. You know, I mean, it's because I don't know. I mean, how effective like the school system is and what they do now, but I've come to the conclusion that that breakup was for a reason, and then I
Mhm,
don't think it had much to do with anything with sports related. You
mhm.
know, but they're very successful at what they do, and I think they still have a team at Wingate though. You know,
No, I shouldn't say no. I don't think there is a Wingate High School with a basketball team.
and
Um,
then when did that stop? As far as you know,
that I don't know. I don't think. I could be wrong, but I was told that. So uh, they told me that, and always be careful of who they are. So I'll
right?
just say I don't know.
But I know that there's so much aspects of what these guys do, man, that I thought that there was still a school, located at
There's a
that
building there, but I don't think it's not Wingate as we knew it.
right. Yeah, I hear you. Well, yeah, man, so hey Les, I think we lost him there, man. He just came from a hard trip, you know. But
Well,
we had like a lot of opportunities to see over the years what Brooklyn has brought to the table and the growth spurt that went through. And it's kind of like when your era started, is when the schools started really competing at such a high level, you know. And what are the comparisons that you're seeing? How I don't know if you follow New York basketball, but how it is now in comparison to your experiences over the years.
no, I really don't. Only because, as I mentioned, after high school, then becoming a student athlete at Utah State, and then after that, I would come to New York in the summer to my mother and father's home, but I really didn't spend any great amount of time in New York anymore, and most of my time was spent in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I'm not real familiar with New York City basketball anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, and things have changed so much. And I always inquire to people if they know how the changes have occurred, and I'm going too. So I just want to always ask people like what my concerns are if they have it as well, because they don't hear the aura of New York being the Mecca anymore. And just based on that, like what's missing from that environment, you know.
Well, one of the things that has happened because basketball is so global now, and you have these traveling teams. So you have traveling teams in AAU basketball now, and then when it comes to talent at the next level, the NBA, as you well know, globally, coaches and colleges are looking abroad for talent, not
Mhm.
just in the communities like in Brooklyn.
Right.
So that has negate a lot of the opportunities that kids from the neighborhood would have had, because now there's a whole new resource pool that the basketball community can choose from, and that's
Yeah.
internationally.
Yeah, and plus there's so many other, I guess factions that are involved. You have the sneaker companies, and everyone's kind of like putting their hand in the bucket to participate in the process. So, like you said, like with the AU process and club teams and the sneaker companies and international things, the pot is open for you to be able to take and do whatever you want, and it's so different than my era as well as possibly in yours, even down to what the NCAA and their importance to what it is now. Like you said, the
They
NIT, the
they
NIT was number one.
That's right. Everyone came in, all of the big schools came into New York uh, to the old Madison Square Garden to play in the NIT. But there's something else that's changed, obviously, with name, image, and likenesses, the NILs, and kids now getting paid to play basketball in college, and then I I'm very pleased that that's happening. but also the basketball world in the game is continuing to evolve and change.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and uh, hopefully it will continue to evolve to where a lot of kids who didn't have an opportunity to play will now be able to play and go to one of these AAU teams and traveling teams and hopefully get an opportunity to live out their dream if their dream is the NBA.
yeah. And it's hard though.
Yeah, but I just want to say this, Eric. Um, as I mentioned, I didn't have a dream of playing in the NBA. I didn't
Mhm.
follow basketball in the NBA really until I went to college. But the thing that I hope that most of our kids do, in addition to that great skill that they have, those there's only a minute number who's going to wind up at the NBA level. Uh, but hopefully they can use basketball to get an education and to get their degrees or develop a skill. Because sometimes when we spend so much time playing basketball in the park, and now before you know it, someone's 30, 40 years old, now what?
Right.
Now what? And you're not going to be able to live that dream. Okay, now what happens to you? So we need to make sure that in addition to the great skills that a lot of our kids have on the basketball court, uh, they have great skills in the classroom and or skills to where they can become electricians or plumbers.
Mm.
But
Well, I think that the first thing that has to happen to an athlete is that you just have to mature. The education is going to come if you pay attention and focus on it. But if before you even get to the point of studies and things of that nature, you have to mature yourself and say, I'm an adult now. So it's responsibilities that things I am responsible for, and I have to learn about them. I see parents and adults around me interacting, doing what they do as adults, and I should be forging towards that in general anyway. And
yeah,
and the
that's
problem
true.
is, but the problem is that people there's a gap and they bypass that, they jump over that environment and they thrust it into once again the money situation of making millions, and they're not prepared emotionally, whether they're educated or not, they're not prepared, and that's what we have to figure out you
Well,
know
well, hopefully, you know, who's in their support group? Who are be it some parents may be seeing their kids with talent and they're having dollar signs in front of their face. So forget about the education. We can get that brass ring if our son can make it to the league. But
right.
then the chances of that happening are slim and none.
Hmm.
So now what's the backup? Uh,
Right.
not wait until he becomes an adult.
Yeah.
While he's on this journey, making sure that there is a plan B. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, too many of our kids don't have a plan B.
Yeah. And a lot of that, it's not just a plan B, but just an understanding. It's like, and I always think about this, and I don't know why, but like when I got married and it's like we took our time, not wanting to rush to get a home, but people are pushing, y'all need to get a home, get a home, get a home, get a home. And it's kind of like, well, I need to learn about this. I need to understand what's going on, blah, blah, blah. It took me a moment. And plus I wasn't ready to be a homeowner, but I had to learn. But I paid attention, and I did things around the house. I learned of my family, my parents, or neighbors, and things. So things that I not only aspiring to be successful at something, and also you got to think about aspiring in my social life and my family life. What kind of family life do I want to have? And those are dreams, just as NBA career is, to have that quintessential all American family. And those things, you don't bypass that thinking because you're making the league. And as a parent, I'm gonna say, well, my son's gonna make the league, so I don't have to worry about him having skill sets, or my daughter making the league and they don't have any skill sets to deal with the world. that money is going to disappear because you're going to be like a little kid in a candy shop. You give him $100, they all of a sudden he's got 100 pieces of bubble gum. So
But
um,
but and your point is well taken, Eric. But again, if you have the skills, they will find you. But if you're gearing your whole life to make it to the league, that can become a problem.
right,
That can become a big problem.
yeah,
You enjoy the game, use your skills to have a good time playing basketball. You can't control what happens after you leave high school, but in the classroom, you can control that. And
right,
this is a whole different conversation, but I just want to say uh, to be fortunate enough to, and I know we're focusing on basketball and our in Brooklyn in our community, but but I would hope that in addition to that, that they're supported by, like I did, I had mentors, Les Roberts, Jack Kaminer, uh, Sparky, Seek, all of these folks, Floyd Lane. They gave me, they honed my basketball skills, but they also prepared me for life after basketball.
yeah, yeah. And that's having them around is, if you look at the community and, like you said, remove yourself from the basketball thought process, there's mentors and people that do that on a regular with people in the community, and they have to be sought out by athletes just as much as because the non-athletes, that's their recourse, is to turn towards community people and having mentors, and because they observe it in that space. And so what you're saying is 100% correct. The athlete needs to get into that space and learn those other things and understand that the longevity of your experiences on the league, it's going to end, and what are you going to do thereafter? Um, and that's real important, because becoming a good person after the fact, and living your life, you got to get back into that realm. It's just
But you
tough for a
can
lot
do
of
both,
guys.
though. My point, Eric, is you can do both.
Right.
Also, I wasn't a big time player in the playground or in the community center, but I put myself in a position, and a lot of us did, whereby if we went to class and we graduated from high school, now we can be showcased because we have grades good enough to get into college.
Right.
And now we're playing Division I basketball, and now the world is seeing us. Whereas with some of these other with some of my fellow players in the park, unfortunately, their talents weren't showcased because maybe the school wasn't paramount in their life, and they didn't get an opportunity to play
Right.
at a Division I school like I did.
Mhm.
I go out to Utah State after playing in St. John's Park and seeing the competition. No disrespect to the competition, but wait a minute. I know guys in the park that will crush these folks, and some of these folks are all Americans. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, no, no. So my point is, if you can put yourself in a position, meaning you can control going to class, you
Right.
can control getting a degree. Those are the things one needs to focus on because there's thousands of kids who didn't make it,
Right.
and
Thousands.
a few hundred, Eric, as 50, 60-year olds may still be in the park playing.
Yeah. They still are. Yeah. And it's like, and chasing that process, at some point in time, you got to let it go. But you're right. The educational portion of your journey, it has to be established and put in place. You know.
Each one teach one. That's what
Yes.
Sports Foundation and the Harlem Professionals were all about in the classroom as well as on the basketball
Yeah.
court.
And you have to have that, whether you become a high school All-American or not. You have to have that educational piece.
That's
Um,
right.
and it means so much. And a lot of people, they bypass it because, when somebody gives you, the key to the city, you forget about everything.
That's
And
right.
that's like you said, living vicariously through your own kids, and you're pushing them. He's gonna get, be in the league. And I've met so many parents that were like, "Oh, my son's going to Duke," and it's like, it's been 8 years, and your son's not even hasn't even entered into college yet because he didn't go to college. But you were always saying he's going to go to Duke. Well, what's going to make him and what's going to get him into Duke? He's got to do those things to get into Duke. If you think he's going to go to Duke, do the things
Well,
to get into Duke.
well, with all due respect, it's amazing how magically some of these top-notch academic schools, if your talents are great enough, magically you can get into some folks. But here's
Yeah.
one thing that I want to mention. I've been real fortunate with basketball and to have a good career that basketball has given me. But as proud as I am about that, I'm more proud here in my office, and you can't see, but I have an undergraduate degree in business administration and human resource management, and I have a master's degree in career counseling and higher education, all from California State University of Los Angeles. I had to work real hard to get those things, work
Mhm.
real hard. And I'm as proud of that as I am with my basketball life.
Right.
So, but many players, and I'm not the Lone Ranger, many players have done the same thing. So it's important for us to make sure that our kids, again, hone their athletic talents, but also hone those academic skills as well,
Mhm.
because it's vital. It's
Yeah.
vital.
Yeah.
It's
and
vital.
and to disregard it and put it on the back burner for the sake of what you think you might be having a large income doing something else, that it's not even a 1% worthwhile doing that, because not even 1% of the people are at that level that would work. There's less than 1%. So you put yourself in statistics, it's like, why wouldn't I do exactly what you're saying? That has to be the focus, because that's the trend that everyone is going in. And the ones that don't respect that and understand that, they find out later. As the old saying, you're gonna learn. You learn either the hard way or the easy way. It's better that you do it the easy way, because there's opportunities abound for you if you do it the easy way. You know,
That's-
um,
And also look at, there's a lot of great players who are multimillionaires, but then you'll see a clip on the news or on the sports channel where Shaq has now gotten his degree. Michael has now gotten his degree. So, they go back to school to get their degrees because their mother wanted them to, or their father wanted them to. It's important. It's important because, as I mentioned, everyone's not a Shaq or Michael, but everyone, if you get an opportunity to go to school for free, you got to take advantage of that. And yeah, you may have the skills to where you can come out after high school or come out after one and done and all of that, but you still have to have a plan B for life after basketball, or if there's an injury, so many things, not just your basketball skills,
yeah,
play in
without a doubt.
your life.
Yeah, and
And
that is
please
the truth.
pardon me for going in that direction,
No,
but
you're
I
right. No, you're right, though. No, you're 100% right. And this has to be mentioned, because to not have the opportunity to speak about it is a failed opportunity. That's not worth it either. And that has to be drowned in. That's
Yeah.
because the level of importance involved in what you're saying, it has to be said.
Yeah.
So I'm appreciative of that. I think that every conversation about any athlete or their sports endeavors has to have the educational aspect in there. It can't be disregarded, because it's really the foundation for which way your whole journey. Your
That's
whole
right.
journey is through the academic process.
The
So
two interviews that I saw that you had with Peter Davis and well, not I didn't see a Ronnie Nunn interview, but Peter Davis went to Michigan State, had a very successful career in corporate life. Ronnie Nunn went to George Washington University, had a very successful career as an NBA referee, but they both got their degrees. I mean, I can't stress that enough. How
Yeah.
important
And
that is.
but you see it all over the place. And like if I'm working in corporate America, I that's the funny thing for me, running into so many people in corporate America, and especially in, the environment that there's not many of us minorities in the trading environment, trading desks and finance, and then to see guys like John Utenthal, who was actually at LIU and he quit, but he got his degree and he ended up having his own brokerage firm called Utenthal Partners. They had over $300 billion in assets. You don't get that not going to class. You don't get that not being successful academically. No matter how. And then what he did, he hired basketball players. That had their degree. So before I know it, Richie Gordon from Boys High, Columbia, he's working there. Vernon Outlaw, and I'm on a trading desk for another company, and we're having a meeting, and they all walk in. I'm like, it's like 6'7", 6'6". I'm like, what's, and everybody was in shock. But these are athletes who hone their skills in the classroom.
But there's another aspect that I think it's important for us to mention. College isn't for everyone, and it's not the be all end all. For the last 5 years, I've worked for, I was in Salt Lake working for a company called Cache Valley Electric, and we're one of the premier electrical construction companies in the country. Having a skill, be it as an electrician or plumber, those are other avenues that our kids can look to choose, because, as I mentioned, if college was really the be all end all for our kids, why do they make it so expensive? Yeah, if you're a student athlete, you're going to school for free, but sometimes some of our folks forget about the student aspect of it,
Right.
and just the athlete part of it. But if you get an opportunity to go to school for free, wonderful. But those who don't and wind up not going to college, while they're still young men, take a look at the trades. Take a look at getting a skill that society will always need, like an electrician or a plumber. I just want to mention that as well.
No, I'm in that space as well, because I that's funny thing you're just saying it, because earlier today I was doing some work in the house. I know how to do stuff like that. You're right. I learned, and that was my parents. My dad teaching me skill sets, how to do. I know how to do tile work, sheet rock.
No. Please, pardon me. Maybe I didn't make myself clear. With all due respect, yeah, you know how to do that. But if you called an electrician or a plumber, how much they will be charging you
Oh
per hour
yes.
to do? That's what I'm talking about. Learn to do that, and then
Oh
become a
yeah. Oh
general.
yeah. No, no. The prelude of what I'm saying is the fact that I've eliminated those guys from doing
Yeah,
work for me, because I know how to do it, because they
right.
are expensive.
But most
Exactly.
people don't have your skill like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And these kids can get that skill. We would bring, after 4.5 years of apprenticeship as an electrician, an entry level position with our company would be 60, 65.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you got another kid. And again, I don't want to confuse people by saying, well, our kids need to go to college. Yes, that's wonderful. But for those kids with colleges and everything, you can do an apprenticeship for 4.5 years, become a journeyman electrician, and then start out in an entry level position or as a journeyman at 60, 65. Whereas Johnny, who has a 4-year degree in sociology or something like that, may come out, first off, if he's not rich, he may have to take out loans, have $90,000 worth of loans to pay back, and he gets an entry level $45,000 job, and for the next 15 years of paying back student debt.
Right. Yeah.
So all of these things one needs to think about while you're on that basketball road. You need to be able to put a plan B together.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that, to add to that, because just using my own personal experiences of seeing others or myself, teammates, and seeing after, years have gone by, and some of them not knowing what they want to do because they never had any direction in that. And even though they did get that free education and an opportunity for that, they didn't know what they wanted to do. They were still had a loss there. And for me, that the ability to learn other skill sets, my parents showing me things accounting wise, math wise, physical labor type of work that my dad was showing me, but also he ran his business, so the business aspect of it. But then, so being around people, and because he would then share experiences of other people, like his friends, and I'm going, like, my dad was one of the first, well, probably one of the first African Americans to have a trucking company in Brooklyn. He had like 18 tractor trailers, and but getting to know the drivers and those guys, they had other ventures that they were in other than working for my dad. And that's when you learn certain things and skill sets about adulthood, that opens your eyes. That you might have your course written. I'm getting my degree. I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this business. Blah blah blah. But then you hear about somebody else said, you know what? I have a second possibility, a third possibility. I know how to do this. I work on cars, even though I work in a bank. And learning all these different things in your life as time goes on is the aspect that helps, and I guess it doesn't inhibit, but it enhances exactly what you're saying, Marvin. The educational aspect is enhanced.
And you are blessed to have had parents who gave you that guidance. Some of our kids, unfortunately, may not have that. They
Right.
may have
Very true. Very true.
have that, be it uh, one parent, much less two parent, to guide them in that direction. So
Mhm.
uh, that may not be the norm in all cases.
Right.
So
Right.
hopefully, going back to when we talk about mentorship, maybe there's somebody in that community, some coach, some teacher, some relative who will give them that guidance and knowledge to, if this basketball thing doesn't work out, you got this to happen. People go to Europe and all kind of places, chasing that dream. But then when that dream does not happen, playing here in the NBA, okay, where's plan B?
Yeah, absolutely.
And now you're 35 years old. You're still a relatively young man, but if you don't have any skills, nor do you have any academic education, somebody's going to be telling you what to do for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
as
Well, I got
opposed
about 50 guys,
to
man, in Brooklyn that I need you to talk to.
well, just let me know. And yeah, Delta's it's only 2 hours and 15 minutes to get up to Brooklyn, so I can be available whenever you want. That's
Yeah.
very kind of
But
you.
no, but it's rough that I see that people, I don't know what they're doing in their professional lives, but they're still chasing the dream at 30, 39, 40 years old. Um but life ends up being tough for them.
Yeah,
And it's tough for everybody in general. So
exactly right. Yeah.
so it's like you're walking around slowly because you're carrying a rock. Don't start putting like little pebbles in your pocket because that accumulates, and now you really can't move. And that stagnant way is you get caught up, and that's what happens. A lot of people and you said the word mentorship and having conversations with others, elders, and listening to their wisdom. It wakes you up a bit, and that's what a lot
That's
of
right.
people need
Very true.
sometimes. Because I needed it. I needed it from my peers sometimes. Eric, man, hey, look, take your behind home. Go take care of your family. Because you're still young. You want to hang out. Like, yeah, go home and take care of your family. This guy right here was always on my case. Like, Eric, it's time for you to go. You know, Because Cassandra's called 3 times already, man. Come on,
If you're lucky enough to have a family of your
yeah,
own,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
another thing.
mhm,
Everyone doesn't have a family. They're
yeah,
too busy chasing the dream, and it's just them.
right,
And then once that dream is not realized, uh-oh, now what?
right,
You may not be attractive to someone because you may not have a job because you don't have any skills. And it's just, I mean, there's while you're young and chasing that dream, you got to prepare for life after basketball.
Yeah.
It's a must because there's too many casualties from our community where they didn't reach that dream, and some of our guys are still out there.
yeah. And it's
Yes,
hurtful to
years old.
watch.
That's
If
right, it is.
it is, it really is, and it's like, and especially when you're kind of removed, you're looking from a distance, and like you hear about a guy, and he's in high school, he's playing well. You hear him when he goes to college, and then he disappears, and you don't hear anything about him. And then before I know it, I hear that he's homeless, man, and walking the streets of downtown Brooklyn or something, and it breaks my heart to see that because that whole journey.
And they will have Eric. I found this in one of my scrapbooks. I know a real famous player who carries in his wallet, a clipping from when he was all that in high school. But he's now anyway. It saddens me with some of our.
Yeah.
We've talked about all of these great players from our community, but what about the those who didn't make it? Where are they?
Mhm.
And that's where I hope that for this upcoming generation, or folks who see what you do. And by the way, I want to commend you both for what you're doing with this, because you're giving voice to those names that these kids have heard over the years. They're now seeing Ray Haskins and Ronnie Nunn and all of these folks talk about life, and they can hear it from them because we all came from where they are,
Yeah.
and we
Right, right.
journey we
Yeah.
took to
I,
take.
I, I Marvin, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for
Well,
sure.
I'm gonna tell you something, man. I'm an emotional guy, man. I hope I hold it together, man. But I saw a little stress in you right there for a moment, and you changed subject matter. Because you were speaking to somebody, so a memory came to mind,
Yeah,
and I could see that sadness that you displayed, and I noticed that,
yeah.
and I had that same feeling about quite a number of people that I feel that way. I like, and you didn't mention that person's name, and you changed the subject, and I won't do the same. I will do the same and not mention, but it hurts, man. It really does, and the love of the people that we're and our environment. That's why there's a feeling behind that, and I could see that in
Right.
you. I'm sorry to point that out, you know, but it does hurt, man. It hurts to see somebody fall, from grace. And for me, that's the worst thing in the world because it's like I can't help them. I could have helped them maybe or whatever, but I'm just saying like I wish I could have. That all of those things come into mind, but it's
But
very hurtful to see. And I call them they're all teammates, and it
but
hurts.
Eric, and please pardon for kind of, but there's one thing that also I've learned. You can suggest, recommend, tell someone you need to move on now. But
Hmm.
and on one hand, who am I to tell someone to stop chasing the dream? Do I have that right? Technically, no. Because unfortunately, people will hear that, but they're not really listening because
So let
they
Yeah.
me ask you a question. You said
yeah,
technically no. Is there a point where you do have that right, and what is that?
yes. If I'm that parent, if I'm that family relative, if I'm that family member, I have a right to tell my family member, okay, we now need to wake up and start preparing for real life because playing in the NBA or playing professionally in Italy and the AB, that's not real life. I mean, that's a
That's right.
privileged life that I've had a part of. But my career ended. I tore my lateral meniscus when I was in Italy, came back to Los Angeles. Now it was time for part two of my life, which was real life. I'm 30 years old, and now what am I going to do the rest of my life? I didn't have a degree at that time because my senior year, I took incompletes in college because I was playing these All-America games. The first thing I did was have my units transferred from Utah State to California State University, and I now was enrolled in school to get my degree, for my business degree, and then my master's. Fortunately for me, this is aside from basketball, I also did things, in front of the camera. I was a member of the Screen Actors Guild for 7 years. I did television commercials, I did television shows, and all of that. But 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 I know where I wanted to go in my life, I had to get a degree. And once I got that degree, I then wound up working for the McDonald's Corporation for 10 years and then for FedEx for 17 years, all in HR. And I was able to have the kind of life that I had hoped to have.
Now let me ask you a question. Would you have would that have happened if you had a landed the role in Die Hard with Bruce Willis?
No.
I'm just messing with you.
Oh, no, but wait a minute. Well, with all due respect, now that you say that, have you all ever seen a film called Airplane?
Yeah.
With Kareem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in that film.
There you go.
The next time you see Airplane, you'll see me in the film.
There you go.
What part of the movie are you in?
Okay. Well, I don't have a speaking role, but the star Robert Hayes, he has flashbacks, and one of the flashbacks is they land in the jungle and they crash land in the jungle, and you'll see him being brought in to meet the chief of the African tribe. I'm the big native who brings them in. Then he teaches us how to play basketball. And now that you know me, and if you see Airplane again, because right now it's playing somewhere in the world every day, you're going to say, that's Marvin. That's him. So, yeah.
I'm going to watch it tonight, man.
Yeah, do that. And then text me the scene where he's you'll say, you're right. There's my receipt.
Wow.
So anyway, I got to tell you, this has been such a wonderful hour that we've been talking, and I am very honored to have had the opportunity to meet you both and to be a part of this. It's been a delight, and I appreciate the person who turned me on to the Facebook site, and Eric, you both have been very kind to invite me to be on today. This has been, you've made my week, and the week hasn't even started.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And this is something that Les and I, we talked about doing, and unfortunately Les fell asleep on us, but he had a long flight, man. He had he just got home.
I got home at 5:45 this morning, man.
I hear you.
It was
from Florida, so
that's just fine. That's just fine. I hope one day, and Eric, I know where you are. Where are you? Where are you located?
I'm in Jersey. I'm in Princeton, New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Oh, speaking of Princeton, I got to be reunited recently. Do you know the name Brian Taylor?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Brian Taylor played with the Nets. He was an All-America at Princeton, and he's done some magnificent things. His brother, if you follow the NFL, his brother is Bruce Taylor, who is the great defensive back with the San Francisco 49ers.
Okay.
But anyway, Brian and I have reconnected recently. But
how is he doing?
Oh, he's doing wonderfully well.
Really?
As a matter of fact, I think it's next week in Perth Amboy, New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're dedicating this big basketball court and murals to Brian Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Brian
Right.
is done well.
Yeah. He's and he's like these are. It's funny you're mentioning guys' names, and to at least to me, I'm pretty sure to Les as well, that you're mentioning guys that they're statesmen. They were statesmen of the league. They conduct themselves in a manner properly. We could cover some non-statesman statesman guys like Marvin Barnes or something, but you know, but you've been mentioning guys that really were professionals.
And there's more, and Eric, there's more of them than not. But
Right.
unfortunately, media will show some of us who may have fallen on hard times or doing things that, no, there's so many of us who are living decent lives, have families, have given back to their community, who have, I mean, one of the most rewarding things that basketball brought me was years ago, I was part of a group called Operation Sports Rescue. And we used to tour New York City, putting on basketball clinics for kids, and then also talking to them about ethnic pride and the value of education. Mel
Right.
Davis, Tiny Archibald, the then Lou Alcindor, all of us, we used to put on these clinics, and again, giving back to the community. So there's a lot of that going on, but to most media, well, that's not that sexy. We
Right.
want to put this other stuff on.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
And it's
right.
unfair, and it's funny because they hold the camera, and it's like somebody should snatch the camera out of their hands and do it right.
Well, but also, Eric, who's in the room when they decide what's to be covered? It's important for folks like us to be in the room where decisions are made as to what in the community we should be covering.
Right.
I went on a civil rights tour a few years ago with 4 buses of kids from New Orleans to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and we stopped in Philadelphia, Mississippi, where the 3 Freedom Riders were murdered. We stopped in Birmingham. As a matter of fact, we watched the baseball game. If you're aware that Willie Mays recently died,
Last week,
and they showed Rick Wood, that field, the oldest professional stadium in the country. We had we watched the game there, and then we went down the street to the 16th Street Baptist Church where those 4 little girls were murdered, where bombed. And then we ended up at the University of Alabama at their unbelievable football complex. I said all that to say this. I appreciated being invited to that, but one of the concerns I had was, of those 250 kids who were on that bus with us at that football complex, maybe 2 or 3 would be Division I football players, maybe, but all of them can be chemists. All of them can be biologists. Instead of taking it to the football complex, bring in the chemistry professor, bring in the biology professor. And those are the things our kids need to see. But a lot of times, the people who sponsor these things will see us as future athletes, but not future astronauts and chemists and all of that. That mindset needs to change.
Yeah, that's sad.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, no, that's part of the conversation, because what it is like, but the landscape has a fog, and the fog does not allow you to see, but so far. And like you said, it has to be presented. Somebody has to push that chemist forward out of the fog so they can see them. They're being hidden by the powers that be, because they don't want to give them that info.
You can be it.
Right. Exactly. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. My wife and I were watching TV. I'm watching Trading Places. And in the end of the movie, they're in the commodity stock exchange. One World Trade Center, right there, Les, right down the street from where we both work. And then when they're watching the show in the scene, and it was a legitimate scene in the pit where all the traders are doing their thing. I froze the camera of the television show and tried to find a black guy, and I couldn't. And I couldn't, and that hurt me because Eddie Murphy that's the black guy, but
Right.
there were no others, and and people of our color, and people I know have not been never really exposed to the stock market. They don't understand the process, what it is, how it stands for, what the works are, what happens inside, the concepts of buying and
Yeah.
selling and trading. It's a mess as far as information. But these kids aren't pushed that, you know. And like you said, you can get a team and go and play against Connecticut high school players or go to DC, but you don't, like you said, but you don't have kids going down to Florida to space camp. They're not finding about microbiology and the environment in that level. So
what you're saying, Eric, and you walk a fine, I walk a fine line with I'm getting ready to say. I remember in the summertime, many of my peers after college, we would go back to be it St. John's, or we play in the Rucker in the summer once I became a pro, and hone our basketball skills. But I remember there were a couple of my white teammates in the summertime, they wouldn't be playing basketball. They would get internships at banks or learn about finance and things like that. Prepare, and a couple of people I'm talking about are Hall of Famers, but they keep learning about life after basketball and finance. Whereas we would be told by our agents and all that, go play, I'm telling you, go. It's the mindset as to how we are seen and what is presented to us. And every chance I get, I tell young black and brown kids about you want to live a life. Let me preface what I'm going to say. I'm not wealthy. I didn't make a lot of money. My first contract with Denver was $290,000 total. I mean, and that incentives, but my salary was $30,000. My first salary with Denver. Now again, I'm 20 years old, so that was a lot of money in 1971.
Absolutely,
a lot of money, but that was gross also. But that wasn't net. But my point is that I didn't know about present and future value of money. I didn't know about investing. I didn't know about the stock market. My family, we didn't talk money. We didn't talk.
Yeah.
My father made $125 a week. He worked at Ward's Baking Company in the Bronx. They made tip-top bread. My mother was a housekeeper at the Edison Hotel in Manhattan. They worked hard, but we didn't talk about money and finances. And I tell young people, anyone who will listen, you want to live a life to where when you stop getting a paycheck, you can have the same lifestyle that you had when you was getting a paycheck.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what you should strive for. And maybe, hopefully, you'll have a partner as well. But through investments and income. I told someone, oh yeah, I don't have a salary. I don't. My position was eliminated with the company I was working for, and they said, "Oh wow, what?" I said, "No, I have a lot of different streams of income.
Right.
Salary was just one of them, and you want to put yourself in a position to where you have streams of income, where you don't have to quote work another day in your life and still have the same lifestyle travel where you want, eat what you want, own your own home, all of these things. That should be the goal.
Yeah.
This conversation is going a lot of different ways. I apologize, but
Nah, man, it's great, man. It's great. It's very great, brother. Appreciate it,
You
man.
got yourself into trouble because you're talking to guys that talk, man.
well, again,
You
this has
know,
been
and then
wonderful.
but you're speaking, to the truth of things, and it needs to be said. And once again, the mentors and people being around you to help you through it is part of it should be part of a person's landscape. And even but the community coaches that we had, like all of the guys that we mentioned, but for me and Les, it was probably George Merton, who was part of
Right.
Restoration Corporation on Fulton Street, and he was
Yes,
a disciple, I guess, of Gil Reynolds.
yes.
Was and that was them. It was them too, and they were always trying to develop us as men. Always. I mean, they George Martin. Everybody called him my father because that's how I was like his guy, right? And
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
we'd go to Restoration Corporation and be sitting in his office for 8 hours. He'd
And
Mm-hmm.
make
many
us
times
sit there.
you would be, we would be with our mentors more than we would be with our fathers or
That's
mothers. We would
right.
spend more time with them than our regular family because
That's
after
right.
being with them, you go home and eat and go to sleep and then get up next day and then spend all day in the summer
Yeah.
being out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there are
Yeah.
some of us, and all of our teammates that we played for George, we all talked to each other. One being Ricky Jarvis, and
Mm-hmm.
Ricky is, and I'm not throwing you under the bus, Ricky. So bear with me, okay? I know you're gonna get upset, maybe, but he lives and dies the words that George Merton told him, and to this day, he says, "Coach wanted us to do this."
Mhm.
Eric,
Yeah.
Coach wanted you to do these podcasts
Mm-hmm.
to share information with people. Coach wanted you to bring the community together. He always says that, and I don't verbalize it, but I know it's in my heart. Les doesn't verbalize it, but we know in our heart that there's certain things that he said. Give back to the community, show
Did
them,
he pass
show them.
as a coach passed? George,
Yes,
he passed?
yes,
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And it was one of the worst days of my life, man. But I mean, the guy was like everything to me, and in that sense. And I had both my parents. Les had both his parents,
Mhm.
But this guy, man, he infiltrated himself in with truth and information and caring, man. He wasn't a lovey-dovey guy hugging
Mm-hmm.
us or handshaking. Like, don't touch me, son. He was like a drill sergeant, but
Yeah.
but you could feel the love. The drill sergeant with love, man, and it's like you had to listen to that stuff. 50 years later, more than 50 years well, actually for me 52 years later, I lived the things that he says to me about giving back, helping people, put your heart in the right place, give it what it takes, man. You got to give it.
Yeah.
And it's John Wooden saying, your best is required, all the time. It's always required. And these men, like drown that in our heads. So there's educated individuals, guys that are very successful and giving back to the communities. And it's odd. Well, we just right before you came in, I was talking to my daughter when Mandy came in, and that's one of the things that she said, quoting her conversations with me and her godfather Les about that time. And the time was great because she says not everybody made it, but we became good fathers, good husbands, people in the community. We gave back to the community, and that audio that she said, it's on the page, and it speaks to that as to the kind of men that we are. And it's not
And
just
that's what life is really about. As
right,
I said, this
Yeah.
professional basketball and all these other things, that's very nice. But what you just described is real life.
right,
My parents passed away. It's now 40 years ago. He passed away 41 years ago. But since
Wow.
that time, you mentioned the gentleman George, and Al Les refers to him as coach, or Ricky refers to him as coach. Well, my coach, and Lester has passed away, years ago,
uh-huh,
but my
Right.
coach, Jack Kaminer, to this day, we speak 2, 3 times a week. And I
Yeah.
never, and interestingly enough, and both of you probably can refer to this or relate to this, he will always be coach. I can't call him Jack. I will all many of my other teammates will call him Jack, but uh, I will always call him coach because
Yeah.
he's my mentor. He's my big brother. He's my all of that, particularly now that my parents have passed. He's the one who I go to. He's the one who has been my mentor. Him so anyway.
Right. That's right.
I know
This
that feeling, man.
Yeah.
You know,
and
Absolutely.
because of basketball, we have forged these relationships forever and ever and ever and
Mm.
ever. And my corporate life, I don't have any real friends from my corporate life
Wow. Okay.
who would even have come to my home because I'm very private. But
Mhm.
my basketball life, the Ray Haskins and all of them, I will be in touch with them forever and ever and ever.
yeah,
Nice. Very
yeah.
nice.
And it's really it's well, I'm the choke up guy, man. And it's true, man. And it's like I love it, man. I love it. I love, that.
And we may not, Ray and I hadn't spoken for many, many years, but
Right.
knew what each other was doing. I knew that he was the coach of LIU. I knew
Right.
what he's been doing in the community in the New York City public schools. And I think he knew what I was doing in terms of
Yeah.
basketball and all of that.
Yeah.
But the minute we see each other, it's love.
There you go.
Absolutely.
And it
Yeah,
will
Absolutely.
always be that.
yeah. And that's what Ray is, man.
That's right.
That
Yeah.
guy, man, he's incredible, man. He really is. And but there's also it's funny how you have all of those skill sets and qualities that he has, but the cherry on the top is that Ray's just a nice guy, man.
That's right.
He's a
That's right.
Enough
nice
said. You're
person,
right.
man.
You're right. You,
That's right.
hmm
That's right.
And I've known that guy since I was like 10, man. And
That's right.
I he was just a nice guy. But then once again, that's everybody, man. I don't know any rapists, killers, mad murderers, pedophiles. Nobody that no ball player I know is in that category. You
When
know,
when I come to New York, particularly when I would come there on business, and I would have friends with me, uh, or my family members. I have a son, a daughter-in-law, and three grandchildren. Uh, and my son, I mean, they can see me on YouTube or something like that in terms of my basketball career. But one of the things that I always do when I take friends to New York, I'll stay in Manhattan for the most part, but I'll rent a car for a day and come on, let's go to Brooklyn. And the first place I go, the St. John's Rec, and I look for, and Lloyd McCrory will tell you because he knows I talked to him last week, and I will go up to St. John's Recreation Center and point to Buddy Keaton and Lester Roberts and Lloyd McCrory and talk about Ray Haskins because this is where it all began. Uh,
mm,
that's my Mecca. That's where I go to feel
nice.
home.
Nice.
I lived in LA for 30 years. I live here for almost 20 years. But Brooklyn and Bed-Stuy, that's home and will always be.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
I
You
get
know,
that. I
and
get
it's been it's kind of like the coming home and going through those stations of locations to stop by, that's like a requirement.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
yeah.
requirement. And
Kingston
oddly enough,
Park.
but I can't keep track of it because for me, I was like a nomad. I played everywhere, everywhere. So like I had to start at, let me see, PS 92, Foster Park, Wingate, Lincoln Terrace, BRC, Brevoort, St. John's, Kingsborough Projects, Tillery Park. I'm all over the place, man. But
it. Yeah.
look at those locations, and all of those locations have people whose bases are there. So
Yeah,
that once again reinforces the number of athletes that we're talking about over the years that have honed their skills and in that environment. And it's kind of like a Shangri-La environment because it's our comfort zone. It's where we grew up. It's our home. And the good feelings, man, they never go away. They
That's
never go away,
that's
man. I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
there's so much joy in this conversation that is ridiculous.
Well,
Mhm.
again, I the- I'm going to research and see if there's any more of these anywhere. But if I
Okay.
were you all, I would start with Sports Foundation if they still exist up in
Okay.
Harlem.
Okay.
I'd start with Sports Foundation, and I don't know if Bob, well, I start with Sports Foundation and ask them, and you can see it. And what I'll do, Eric, I'll text a copy in terms of what it looks like.
Yeah,
So,
because if anybody can
Yeah.
find it, we can find it, right, Les?
okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Absolutely.
all right,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be good, you
yeah.
know.
Well, listen,
So,
man,
thank you.
this has been really, gee, my goodness, man, such an enlightening
I'm
conversation,
telling you,
man,
man.
and extremely appreciative of you participating
Oh,
and sharing your story with us.
Eric, one time I was telling my son, um, well, in November I had my youngest grandchild. She was named poet laureate, one of four poet laureates for the state of North Carolina. And as a gift to her, I said, and I found out she had never been on a plane. So I said, let's go for a plane ride. Let's go to New York. So I gifted her and her mother and father. And we went to New York, and that's when I went to St. John's. And then we're gonna have dinner in Harlem. I want to have dinner at a Jamaican restaurant because I grew up going to Rodney's, not Rodney's, but West Indian Willie's. That was where they sold meat patties down the street from St. John's
Yeah.
Park.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we went to Harlem to have dinner at a place called The Edge. As a matter of fact, I've seen it advertised during the recently during the NBA finals. But anyway, so we had this Jamaican restaurant, and I said, oh, while we were waiting for our table, I said, there's someone in this room who's famous. And my grandchild said, oh, you? I said, no, I'm not famous. I'm not even black famous. I'm not, but it just so happened Monica McNutt was having dinner.
Oh,
And
okay.
I introduced myself to her and my family. She was very gracious, and I told her how much I enjoy her work. And I shared with her I was in the league, and she appreciated it because I was in the league and told her how much I enjoy her basketball knowledge.
Right.
Nice.
And
Nice.
I and yeah, and as wonderful as she is, if you like Monica McNutt, you'll love Monica McNutt in person because she was just as gracious and kind to my family and I.
Okay.
Mm.
Just want to share that with
Yeah.
you.
I'm more concerned about what did you have at the Jamaican restaurant?
Oh, well, I had a wonderful seafood pasta dish,
Mm.
and then I also I normally don't eat. I'm a pescatarian, so I don't
Okay.
eat other meats. But not at that restaurant, but somewhere else in Brooklyn on Flatbush Avenue. We went to Junior's to have cheesecake during the trip, but I also stopped at a place to get a beef, chicken, and vegetarian patty, meat patty. So I wanted to
Yeah.
give them the full flavor of that. And we had one of the dishes we had was not at the Edge, but at another place, curry, a goat, and also. But anyway,
So are
that's
you
what we had.
Caribbean? Are you Caribbean?
No,
Okay.
I grew up in Bed-Stuy.
Yeah, he's from
Grew up,
Brooklyn.
yeah, Brooklyn is Kingston for the most
Yeah, I
part.
know. There's a Jamaican right here, Jamaican.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Yeah, man.
exactly.
What you say, man?
Oh, and if you remember, the great television show in living color. Remember they had a sketch
You
where
got
the
8 jobs.
girl brought home, yeah, her new boyfriend, and they asked, "What do you do?" And he said one thing, and they were waiting for him to keep going. They said,
Yeah.
"You lazy, no, one
Yes.
job."
You
But,
just
You
got
leave
one
Rumble
job.
Clyde.
but
Well,
anyway,
But you've infused yourself with some Caribbean flavor here because Les is from Jamaica and my wife, I'm an American, but my wife is from Trinidad. So
yeah,
we're
yeah,
all in there, man. And
oh yeah,
I cook Caribbean food all the time.
oh yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
we
Yo,
both,
yo, yo. I'm not from Jamaica. I'm from Brooklyn.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Your
My
family.
grandmother was from Jamaica.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Excuse me. Let me correct myself.
And my wife is Jamaican. Yeah.
And to those who may be from outside of the community, and we're not talking about Jamaica, New York either.
Exactly. Right. That's right. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
No
It's a whole
disrespect to Jamaica,
different
New
thing.
York, but we talking about the Jamaica.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a whole different thing, man.
That's kind of a whole different vibe.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
again, thank you very much for this opportunity. This has been exciting, and
yeah, yeah, very much so. And it's been very relaxed conversation as it usually is. And once again, I just want to thank you, Marvin Roberts, legend, Wingate High School, Utah State University, as well as ABA and NBA experiences. Thank you very much for being on the show. Unless you
Yeah.
got anything to add to that?
Yeah, man. Yeah, hey, Marv, man. It's been a pleasure to meet you, brother. And I mean, when Eric sent me your resume, man, your basketball resume, I was shaking my head. I was like, damn.
that's
How,
very
how,
kind of you.
how come I don't know this brother?
That's
Yeah,
very
man.
kind of you.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
he's representing as well. That's the other thing I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Marvin.
Well,
I
Eric,
appreciate that.
I got to get the new logo. This
Yes,
is the
yes,
original logo. I got to
yes.
Yeah.
get the new one as
And my
well.
apologies for the change on you, man.
That's
We talked
okay.
about that. That was
Look
funny.
here, Eric. I was fortunate to save my little shekels where I can purchase a new one as well.
There you go.
Okay. All right.
You
Very
know,
good.
but
Very
yeah,
Okay.
good.
all right, once again, everybody, thank you very much for watching the show, accepting our guest Marvin Roberts to the show, and we're gonna end the show by saying we'll see you guys next game. Take care.